I think there's just like a lot of brands that need that coaching. I think the sales process is frequently kind of coaching the client through like what they need to do. And like by being in this industry for a while, like we know what works because we're so involved in the industry. Whereas like their job is to figure out how to sell the product. And like my job is to tell them like how to connect with their audience, which will sell product, but like how to build their brand.
Real quick, I just wanted to say there was a technical error on my side where I did not capture my video angle, but I still have the visual of Nate and some good audio. So for my side, you'll just see like a thumbnail of my ugly mug and a visual waveform. Just wanted to clear that up. Enjoy the episode. Nate, welcome to the Story Arc podcast, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Great. So Nate, we just met. And I saw your work online, saw it on Instagram, saw it from a mutual friend of ours, and I thought it was amazing. And I thought your insight on documentary filmmaking and then growing a video production company would be helpful for the audience. So I wanted you to like come on and talk about that, talk about your story, and then I want to jump into some of the more technical aspects of what it takes to grow a business, tell a really good story, working with clients, all of the things as what we do here at Story Arc podcast. So first, Nate, tell me, as what I understand is you're an amazing photographer as well as a filmmaker. So tell me how you got started in sort of media production in general.
Yeah, that goes back a bit. I've pretty much always had a camera in my hand, from like a little Kodak point and shoot to the Nikon Coolpix. My parents kind of just always were getting me little point and shoot cameras for Christmas or whatever.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time outdoors as a kid, traveling a bit, and just kind of always had the camera with me and would just kind of snap little artsy photos like you saw on Instagram back in the day, and just for fun, from like a very young age, I would say. And then at some point that transitioned into some video stuff. I picked up like one of the original GoPros and started making little fun GoPro videos, and spent a lot of time fishing up in Canada and was making fishing videos for actually like for GoPro. They were like, this was so early.
That's awesome.
That they were like sending me all the new like fishing pole mounts and stuff. And editing an iMovie, just chopping some stuff up. And then it was in probably 2016, 2017, I had the opportunity to spend some time in New Zealand in college, and decided I would buy a real camera before that trip. Yeah. So I invested like all of the money I had in a Sony A7 II.
That was the camera then.
It was.
That
it
was the prized possession was the Sony A7.
And this was like such a huge upgrade for me from my Nikon Coolpix.
Yeah, there you go.
And so I went to New Zealand and like figured out how to use a professional camera and like shot a bunch of landscapes and learned how to do astrophotography because the stars there are unreal. And started sharing that stuff on social media, and people responded really well to like good looking landscape photography from a beautiful part of the world that I had the opportunity to be in.
And that was like, you said 2016, 17?
Mm-hmm. I think I was a junior in college.
Yeah. That's when things were really at the heyday of if you wanted to grow your following. It was Instagram. Is that what you were saying? Like online? Yeah.
That's where I was sharing it. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, that was the heyday of that. Definitely. I mean, now it would be hard. Like if you started from scratch and just being a photographer, that would be kind of challenging.
For sure.
But
saturated.
So you were growing your following, and that was giving you a lot of opportunities in like photography.
So I had zero opportunities yet. Like I did not know that video production was a career at all. Like it just hadn't even crossed my mind ever. I went to school and got a degree in computer engineering. But
that would be really helpful now, though. Like if you just went that path.
Yeah.
But, instead you wanted to go the storytelling path.
I went for the
be the broke storyteller.
No, but I came back to college for my senior year, and like all of a sudden now I was like the guy with the camera. Like everybody knew me from
The guy
like
with
the
the camera.
stuff that I'd
Yeah.
been posting, and so people would come up to me and they're like, "Hey man, does that thing shoot video?" And I was like, "Yeah, it does video." And so I started getting some like random paid gigs in
Yeah.
college. The first, I think it was my first ever paid project, was this like 20-minute documentary for a social justice organization in Indianapolis where I was going to school. And I just had a connection who worked at this nonprofit, and they were like, "Hey, we need to produce this documentary. Like, our
Yeah.
guy bailed."
Yeah.
And they're like, "I know this guy, Nate, with a camera."
Mm.
And they asked me if I could shoot a documentary, and I was like, "I
Let's
don't
do
know
it.
what a
Yeah.
sure." is, but sure.
That's awesome.
And I mean, I'm sure it's terrible. I haven't watched it in many years.
Yeah.
But I probably invested maybe 3 months of time into that. And I think it ended up paying like $6,000 or somewhere around there. And for a college student,
Yeah.
I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
that
Buy
is
a
insane.
little Honda Civic with that or something.
Yeah. Or like a drone and a couple
Or there
lenses.
you
And
go,
I was
some more
like,
gear.
this is crazy. So I'm
Yeah.
going to invest this back into the business.
Yeah.
And I think I picked up like my Sigma 35.
Yeah.
I got my original Mavic drone. I was like, that's crazy that you can make $6,000 like just like shooting a video.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then kind of from there it just
Yeah.
snowballed. And
So did you graduate from college?
Mhm.
Yeah. So what year was it that you kind of went fully on your own? Like, was it full-time income for you to begin with?
Yeah, it was 2018, graduated, decided to move out to Colorado because I at that
Indiana
point,
wasn't
like,
doing it for you?
Indiana wasn't doing it for me. I grew up in Illinois, like in the Chicago suburbs, and I knew at that point, like when I graduated, I was like, computer science was fun, but I think I want to go try to make this thing work.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do it in the outdoor industry. Again, Indiana, not the spot.
Yeah, right.
So I was like, yeah, I'll move to Colorado. My sister was out here, but other than that, I had zero connections, no network, no portfolio.
Yeah.
Just started from the ground up. And my thought process behind it was like, if I can't make it work, like now is the time to do it.
Yeah.
Because if I can't make it work, then I'll go get a job in computer science.
Yeah.
But I was like scared of going and settling into a comfy career with a high paying job and just like doing that and then like hoping that someday maybe I could do stuff with a camera.
Right.
Because I knew so many people who were like doing it on the side, but maybe afraid to quit their full-time job to go freelance. So I was like, I'll try it now. And if it doesn't work, then I'll go get a real job.
So what was it about the camera or storytelling in general that caught your attention more than a stable computer science job with benefits? What was it about
I think it kind of clicked for me when I was in New Zealand, and people were responding so well to like the images that I was sharing, and then like when I got back to college, like people started paying me for it. I was like, I think this career could allow me to do what I love doing, which is being outside and outdoor adventure sports, as work.
Yeah.
Which was a pretty wild concept at the time.
Yeah.
But I was like kind of terrified of getting a job in a cubicle. That was like, that would be the death of me.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought that there might be a chance I could combine it with all of my hobbies. And
Yeah. Right. So like your risk tolerance is low enough to take the leap, right? You're probably young enough because you're just out of college. There's not really a lot of strings attached. Just like, let's see what we can do. And then obviously you probably love the creative process because you didn't want to be in a cubicle. Was there anything even growing up that was creative? Maybe a close friend, parents, or anything, or just life experiences in general that allow you to gravitate more to the creative expression of filmmaking?
Yeah, I don't know. I've always been relatively artistic. And I think once I found a camera and photography, that was just kind of like my avenue to practice art.
Yeah, that makes sense. It unlocked that aspect for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's a lot of people in this industry that like maybe they can't paint, they can't draw,
Yeah.
but they found a camera and they're like, wait, I can be artistic and
Yeah.
creative and like
Yeah.
make stuff. And I think it was also just like sharing my adventures, like a lot of my early photography and YouTube videos and stuff that I was making were just like me wanting to share these places with the world.
Yeah.
Like the reason I bought a GoPro is because I went to Hawaii with my family when I was young, and we went snorkeling with like just like right off the beach from our hotel, and there were like 100 sea turtles.
Yeah.
And I was like, how do I want people to see this, like who
That is
can't
so
be
cool.
here.
Yeah.
And so I was like, underwater cameras. Oh, okay, there's this thing called a GoPro. Let me get one of those so I can film underwater.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I had the opportunity to travel to some pretty wild places
Yeah.
in my life, and I was like, people need to see this and like
Right.
experience it if they can't go there themselves.
Yeah. It seems like the compelling need to share is like a prerequisite for the creative arts.
Yeah.
Like you want to be expressive, but then also, and this is what I want to talk about as well, is the business aspect of it. Like you have to still make a profit. Like we could definitely make this a hobby. You can make it a passion project, and sometimes it serves better in the passion realm, but you decided you wanted to make it a career, but also share. And be expressive with this creative outlet. So what's interesting is you're like in Colorado now, no connections besides you said your sister. How did you start developing that network? What was your method of reaching out to people and connecting with people?
Yep. It's kind of threefold. Like I'd say my number one priority was building my portfolio. I had like a little free website on like Wix or whatever. And I just tried to get out. I was probably getting out almost every day and shooting, which is wild because I hardly ever do that now. But I was just like, I need to show, like, I can't reach out to the North Face and be like, hey, will you hire me when I have nothing to show for it?
Yeah.
So I was just trying to like go out with friends or like take products out that I already owned and like kind of make spec work that looked commercially and build a website with that. And so that was like number one priority was build a portfolio that proves that I know what I'm doing with the camera. Two was probably just networking, attending like local networking events and reaching out to people on social media and like in my area. And we had like a big Colorado photographers crew at that time who were
So to pause on the networking event side of things, because I feel like a lot of people are adverse to going to a networking event. Do you feel like that's still beneficial today, or was it specific to filmmaking, or was it like local businesses? And do you feel like just getting out there was better than nothing at all? And what else were you going to be doing at the time?
Right.
So what was your experience like at these networking events?
Yeah, I'm talking about networking with people in the industry who are
Okay.
working with the cameras, not brands, not local businesses.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking about putting myself in front of a commercial director who might hire me at some point.
Gotcha.
And to this day, like network is everything.
Yeah.
Whether you want to go to the networking events or not, I can't tell you that I'm like super active in that space now.
Yeah.
But when you're starting out and you know nobody in the local area, like, and you are trying to get hired to do stuff with a camera,
That's what you got to do.
it's what you got to do.
You mean cold calls didn't work?
Yeah.
Cold emails?
Well, that was
Sometimes.
that was the third step was cold emails.
Yeah.
I had a list of hundreds of brands that I just compiled in a notebook, and every day I would try to send an email to like 5 or 10 of them.
Yeah.
Because it was just like,
That's good to break it up instead of like feel overwhelmed or even pay someone to do it. I think now times have changed a little bit. What year was this roughly that you were sending out? Or
2018,
2018, I feel like now the whole game is shifted from how you market yourself. fundamentally, it still lives in the realm of relationships and networking.
Yeah.
But like cold emails, I think people are more and more adverse to like getting a cold email, and they're like, you have to be really creative with it. I don't know if there's well, we're talking about your story right now. Maybe we'll jump into some more like technical tips for people now. But so
because cold emails still work.
they can. So you're gonna have to give me some tips about it.
Yeah, I will.
So, but you're building your network. What was like? Was there a breakthrough moment or some things that really worked and didn't work? Like, what was that? The mindset of it during that time.
Yeah, I don't know that there's anything that like really stuck with me that I was like, yeah, this is what works and this is what I need to keep doing. But it was just like a kind of a slow crawl of cold emails, and like every once in a while a brand would bite and they were like, hey, I have $300, can you go do a photo shoot? And I was like, heck yeah, that's so much money. What do you mean? And then like, yeah, we would burn the $300 and invest a bunch more time and effort to make it like a worthwhile project that would look good on the portfolio. Like,
you would invest more into that specific project.
Yeah, like I'd hire a little team to make it like
better.
It's like a little tiny brand that nobody's ever heard of. And
but you're, at the end of the day, you're kind of breaking even.
Yeah, because at that time it was about my portfolio and getting bigger jobs,
right?
As opposed to like making a bunch of money. So I was just kind of scraping by. I think my first year, I lived out here. I made like $25,000, and I was like, "That's amazing." That covered my rent. That covered like my food expenses.
And you were what, 23 or
something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, if I can make $30,000 a year, that's great. And I was like,
So
I think that's probably I was like, I don't know that you can make much more than that. And then I started building the business, and I was like, oh, okay, sky's the limit.
That's awesome. So that's great. So was there ever a couple monumental breakthrough moments, maybe throughout a course of a year, that 20 really helped, some year like that, or a couple projects that really got some attention from other people? Was there anything like that?
I had one project that I got a crazy opportunity to participate on. We shot a kind of like a ski movie for the North Face.
Okay.
And the only reason I was on that project is from a networking event in Boulder that Sony put on. And one of the Sony ambassadors, Nate Luby, was like he was like leading the event.
Yeah.
And I already knew him through Instagram. So I was like, hey man, like I'm going to come to this event. Like we should hang out. And so we spent the day like up in the Indian Peaks wilderness in Colorado, and got to know each other pretty well. Kept in touch after that. And this was like maybe 4 or 5 years later, I got the call from him, and he was like, hey man, what are you doing for the next month? And I was like, I mean, I'm working. Like, what do you mean? That sounds important though. If it's
what's the next month?
So like,
it's a big project. Yeah.
He was like, we're filming this documentary with some pro skiers for the North Face in Alaska, and we need a third cam op. And I was like, all right, I'm free.
That's awesome.
And it was like 2 weeks before the trip. And we were going to be skiing with Kit Delorier and Jim Morrison, two of the like most legendary ski mountaineers that exist.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I was like in decent shape, but I was like, okay, I need to like go train. So I had like
right.
2 weeks to get fit, to keep up with them in the Arctic. And then we spent like 2.5 weeks up in the northern reaches of the Brooks Range, in Alaska, way up in the Arctic, kind of telling the story of Kit and her pursuit of climbing these mountains and protecting the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge up there. And it was just like the whole time I was there, I was just like dumbfounded that I was like a part of this project.
Yeah.
And at that, like, I felt like such a weak link, especially behind the camera. But learned a ton. The film turned out pretty well.
Right.
It's just like one of those opportunities that, like, did I make a lot of money on it? No, not at all. But I would have paid them to like participate and just like go be a fly on the wall on a project like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because a lot of your, like, you're posting on Instagram, like going back to the New Zealand days, you're posting You're developing that following. You're building that network online, but then also in person, locally, going to events, making friendships, and then an opportunity presents itself. And then you take that opportunity, you do the best you can. You put in the time, the effort, the physical training for those 2 weeks, the stint, the quick sprint of trying to keep up with these people, and then that opens up more opportunities. You put that in your portfolio. You share, you make the connections there, and that seems like with everyone I talk to, like the track record. But I think like the underlying component for anyone listening or the application is you got to make the sacrifice up front. Mm-hmm. And as you get more seasoned and more of a veteran, I feel like you still have to make the sacrifice, but it's a little bit different. It's maybe not as risky. I think the hard part is like, I'm married. I have 3 kids. There has to be a certain amount of income that comes in. I think when you're young and you're just kind of like no strings attached, I just moved here, you can take a lot more risks. So for people listening, I think, if you are in that position of being young, and there's nothing wrong with having a family, but just take that into consideration, is like if you can stack up your sacrifices at the beginning, the momentum and the compound effect could be really advantageous, like really good in the future. For sure. But it's not impossible to do it, even if you're halfway, I'm 32, about to turn 33. And I wouldn't say that's old by any stretch of the imagination, but I know there's a lot of up and comers, that are much younger, and they have a little bit of an advantage because they can spend a lot more time building that network. But it's not impossible though.
Yeah. And you might work for free from time to time. You should shoot a passion project from time to time. Like, you should still be doing that because those are sometimes the projects that get you more work.
Right. Right. Yeah. So tell me about that part of things then. Well, let's go back to like kind of getting those big breaks, but now you're really streamlining like a profitable business. And you're working with clients, you're working with other brands, you're getting these better opportunities. Are there some things that stand out to you? Let's jump to the cold email aspect of things. How does that work today? Like, what would you say in a cold email?
Yeah. Well,
what would you offer?
Step 1, I would never send like a cold pitch.
Okay.
Everybody is sending out pitch decks to brands completely cold with like some big project that they want to create for the brand without knowing anything about their needs, their marketing strategy. Like,
and you put all that time into that pitch.
Yeah,
they may not
so much time.
Yeah.
So my cold emails are still just like completely introductory. Hey, I'm Nate. Here's my website. This is what I do. I love your product. I do a bunch of research on the brand, so I'm coming in like with an informed email, and I'm not just saying like, hey, I'm Nate. Will you hire me? I talk about their product or services that they offer and why I think like the content that we produce could benefit them. And yeah, that can be sent to their general like marketing email.
Yeah.
You can reach out on Instagram and sometimes get in touch with the right person. And yeah, a lot of times you don't get a response at all, but I've had like a wild amount of success with at least getting in touch with the right person and like developing a relationship. And maybe we don't work together for 5 years, but they know who I am. I'm on their radar. They follow me back on Instagram. Like they're keeping up with our adventures, like our other production work. So when the time comes that they need to hire a production crew, like we're kind of at the top of mind. And it's the same way with like networking with other production companies and agencies and stuff. Just like slowly developing that relationship over time. And then when this company needs to hire a DP in Boulder, they're like, oh, we know Nate lives out there. Let's give him a call.
Yeah. Making that connection up front. Is there anything besides like what's the response rate for some of the, like how many emails are you sending out throughout like a month or a week or
okay, so
what would be ideal?
I would say when I was starting out, it was like I said, like try to get 5 or 10 out a day.
Yeah.
It's a saturated market. Like you can't be reaching out to Arc'teryx and North Face. Like you need to be finding some smaller brands who are kind of making a presence on social media, or you can see that there's potential to grow. Like
Where are you finding your companies, by the way?
I get
LinkedIn or
I get
Instagram?
so many targeted ads on Instagram for like super cool outdoor brands
Yeah.
that are like
You're
up and
like,
coming, but like you can see they're like posting high quality content, like they're obviously investing money in their marketing, and yeah, you can kind of find that there might be a good candidate based on like what they're doing already. If
yeah.
it's like a brand that's been around for 10 years and they're still posting iPhone photos, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe I'm not reaching out to them
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they don't value like high quality content. Yeah.
So making it, because I feel the opposite in some way, at least in my mind. I'm thinking like, okay, if they're already making like a decent, like it's pretty good, like this looks nice,
They must have a guy.
they must have a guy.
Yeah.
And then the opposite of like, well, they've been around, I know they have the money and they're not doing anything, but they're at least doing something. So could it be either or?
Worth reaching out. I mean,
Yeah.
the worst that happens
Okay.
is you don't get a response or they
Yeah.
don't have any money. But
So with that, let's say you reach out, you said 5 or 10 a day, but let's say now you're doing like maybe, let's say 50 a month. What's like the response rate with something like that?
it's probably skewed because I have surprisingly good success. I don't know what I don't know what the secret is,
Maybe
but
it's
like
in your sales copy. It's in your,
yeah, maybe it is. But yeah, I think just like being a good person and like doing your research and like being friendly or hopping on a call with the brand and like being personable and like, you know, grabbing coffee with their creative director and like, you know, do a meeting at the ski resort and, you know, just being like
Yeah.
an approachable, personable human, like
Yeah.
and kind of being transparent
Right.
and not trying to act like this big like production company. Like
Yeah.
a lot of my clients know that it's just me.
Yeah.
But I would also say like that was early on when I was really trying to get the business off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I was sending that many emails and I probably did that for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then things kind of start coasting. Like you kind of can put it in cruise
Yeah.
control.
The momentum has built up.
The momentum's built up. And then for like the last several years, it's been like maybe 1 or 2 cold emails a month.
Yeah.
Cause,
Okay. Because now you have
now it's kind
people
of
reaching out.
because the network, every
yeah.
single project that you do, the network just expands, and then the phone starts ringing.
Yeah. So where are you at right now then with your brand?
Yeah. So I've built Nate Dodge Studio, which is my little production company. It's just me and a bunch of contractors that I work with on a regular basis. I hire a lot of DPs, photographers, editors,
Yeah.
gaffers. And I've got like a little crew of reliable people that I can count on who I've kind of vetted over the years, and like I know they're not going to let me down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, if we need to show up to set for like a bigger brand that expects 10 people to show up, we'll show up with 10 people. Otherwise, like I rarely have the client on set, and it can just be like me and a buddy out there in the mountains shooting it ourselves. But I would say we do probably like 80% commercial work right now and 20% documentary. I'm trying to find that balance between the two because documentary filmmaking is definitely I'm more passionate about, and that's kind of like the direction that I want to go, but got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Our commercial work has been pretty successful, so like
Right.
I always think there's going to be a side of the business that's doing commercial work.
Yeah.
For sure.
So that distinction between commercial work versus documentary style, what is that distinction for you? Because some people could think of it as like, well, you could sell a video that is documentary style, but maybe that's only 2-3 minutes and not like a 10-minute or feature length or 30-minute piece. Are you making that distinction with brand? Like what for you is like commercial work versus, because you're always docu-style, like your take with things.
Yeah, I try to be like I one of our things is that it's commercial content based on authentic adventure. So like if a brand asks us to shoot let's say their new fly rod, like we're not going to go hire some models who've never fly fished and go stand by river and fake some casts.
Yeah.
Because I've seen a lot of that where there's not even fly line on the reel and they're like whipping this thing around in the air. Like, what are you doing?
But they look really good, though.
They look sick. It was lit really well. But no, like we'll hire like a fly fishing guide who has perfect form. Will definitely catch a fish.
Yeah.
Or like a hunter who like knows how to use a bow properly. And we'll go out on like an actual hunt or chase like an authentic adventure so that it's real stories and like real content. So I would say like right now there is a distinction between my commercial work and my documentary work, but obviously I'd like to kind of merge the two. It's just hard like trying to sell films to brands.
Yeah, so when you're saying documentary, you're thinking something longer, right? Than just like hey, here's our fly fishing, outfit, here's what we do, and it's like this 2-minute kind of inspirational piece, but it's more lifestyle. Like you said, adventure lifestyle, whereas documentary has it's weighted with story. Right. How do you go about trying to I'm sure that's you said it right now. It's like right now you're in the middle of how to convince brands to buy into that. Yeah. I feel like they're shifting more that way as AI emerges. They're trying to be more real. Brands that have that as their ethos. So how do you feel like right now you're in the throes of how to pitch more documentaries? What are you doing?
Yeah, I think years ago brands would spend 6 figures on a documentary, and that doesn't really happen anymore. I think they all need some commercial aspect of the film. So branded documentaries are what's happening. Yeah. But brands still aren't spending like huge amounts of money on a branded documentary without getting a bunch of commercial assets. And I've just learned this kind of recently on like how to pitch this. And we had success doing this for our film Where the Wind Takes You that we shot last year in Svalbard, where we were planning this trip for fun. We were going to go sailing near the North Pole as like just an epic adventure. Like I had a buddy.
Just with your filmmaking.
I had a buddy that invited me to go, and I was like, Svalbard's been on my bucket list forever. I can't turn that down. No matter how much it costs, like I'll just invest, and anything I shoot there is going to be portfolio worthy, whether it's landscape photography that I try to sell as like a print or whatever. If we go shoot some spec work, I have no idea, but I'm going to say yes. And then we were like, well, we should try to make a film, find a story, shoot a documentary, and pitch it to a brand. And we ended up making a pitch deck and offering a bunch of like commercial assets. I don't need to mention the specific brand that we brought along, but we brought their product. Yeah. And we shot a bunch of like commercial photography for them in the Arctic, which is obviously
valuable.
If they were to have that idea and try to hire a production team to go shoot their products on a sailboat near the North Pole, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so we were like, we can make a film for you and get you a bunch of commercial assets for like a tiny, tiny fraction of that cost. And that was really attractive to them. So we actually shot.
Before you set out, right? You submitted this pitch deck, like, we're going to do this film, but we're also take some photography for you.
Yep. Yeah. So we sent that out to like all of the brands that we had in our little network, clients that we've worked with in the past. And it was one of my long-term clients who bid on it. And it was, I think 2 days before we left for the trip, they signed the contract. And nice. So when we hired our editor, Josiah, I was like, hey, we want you to edit this film. Probably better if you're on the boat with us. Yeah. So what are you doing for the next 2 weeks?
Yeah. So you got him last minute.
Got him. I booked his flights the day before we left.
So what was your crew? It was you, Josiah, and...
it was my buddy Ian and Ryan.
Okay.
And then there were a couple other participants on the boat. But
what did you do for sound?
We just did it all ourselves.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know if you had like a...
shotguns and lavs and stuff.
Yeah. Was there like the connection of the people there, like your subjects?
So Ryan, who planned the whole trip, knew our captain from Ely, Minnesota. He's like a dog sled guide
Okay.
in the winters, and in
Yeah.
the summers he captains a sailboat in Svalbard
Yeah.
in Greenland, and he goes all over like
Yeah.
in the Arctic. And Ryan had made a little film with him in the past, so he had a pretty good connection with him. And Peter, our captain, was like, "Hey, like I guide this sailboat in Svalbard. You should come up sometime." And Ryan was like, "All right, I will be there." So Ryan kind of like told Peter's story to us, and we were like, "That sounds interesting enough to be the subject of a documentary." So we asked Peter if he'd be on board for it, and he was stoked about it. So that's kind of where the story came from. And
How long has it been developed? Like I know you finished it, but how long was the whole process?
he invited us on the trip probably like late 2023, and then we went in June 2024.
Yeah.
So lots of planning and logistics and stuff.
Yeah.
And then kind of that whole like the whole like 6 months before the trip, we were pitching brands and just coming up dry
Yeah.
until 2 days before
Did you
the
have
trip.
some like connection with this brand, like back and forth? Did you jump on a call, or was it just emails like before they signed anything?
It was just emails. They had started doing this like documentary series,
Yeah.
kind of telling stories of
Okay.
people
Yeah. So they were
doing
interested
crazy
in that,
adventures,
yeah.
and I was like, this could be a perfect fit for that.
Yeah.
And they agreed. They thought it was a great fit for that
Yeah.
series, and gave us a pretty healthy budget that covered all of our expedition expenses,
That's
because
great.
a trip like that.
Were they really
costs
happy
a
with
lot.
the
They
end
were
result?
stoked.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were stoked.
Do you feel like that opened up another opportunity for more work in the future?
I think so. Yeah, it's a brand that has been doing a lot of commercial stuff for a long time, and I've been doing like their product videos and like their product launch campaigns, and like a lot of the kind of more mundane commercial work where it's like, hey, here's our product, here's what it does,
Yeah.
here's people using it, kind of
Yeah.
like we get it. Like,
Yeah,
their
yeah.
products are the same.
Yeah.
They're just all different sizes. And they finally
We need more of a story
They're
then. We need
finally
something more.
starting to build their brand,
Yeah.
instead of like just trying to sell product. And they're
Yeah.
putting out these like adventure documentaries now, which is awesome for them.
Yeah.
And I think it's the best way that brands can like connect with their audience, is by putting out like stories that resonate.
Right. I think trying to convince a brand to do that right now, when it's like it's in vogue, like it's trending, but it seems like it's only with the bigger brands like Red Bull, Patagonia,
Yeti, and
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
But like, I think what we're saying in to some capacity is like, if you're running sort of like a solo operation of your production company, then you're cutting a lot of costs down. Like instead of these like 6-figure deals, like you can cut it down. It just depends on the project.
Yeah.
But there could be smaller companies. So in other words, there's a lot of people listening at different stages in their career, but there could be like smaller companies that you could pitch the same concept, but show the value of telling a story. And I think, at least my belief is, that the brand has to start with an ethos of trying to tell a story to begin with. If they're not convinced, or their brand isn't around that concept of like trying to make a difference, maybe they're not like a charitable organization or a nonprofit, but they're trying to like, I think retail is like a perfect example of this, because most retail is commodities, like a t-shirt or a sweatshirt. Like you could go to TJ Maxx and pick up a sweatshirt or whatever, but why do I want to buy your jacket or your pair of boots? Because it evokes, or it like possesses a story behind it.
It's a brand that you connect with, and like you feel some type of way about it.
Right.
Like they're doing good things for the world, and like, you want to support that
Or
brand.
it just makes you feel cool. It makes like Nike, it makes you feel like a winner, or like the courage to, go against the opponent and defeat them, in a successful manner, a triumphant manner, whatever. But I think like it's our job, as we're not just storytellers, but we're also the sales aspect of things. Like we have to convince the brands that this is something, not just that we want to do, even though it is something we're very passionate about, but it's really valuable. The ROI is not immediate though. And I think but that's a whole nother like marketing discussion. Is marketing isn't like a 1-to-1 ratio. You post this, you put this marketing dollars to it, you get this many customers. People want to know that, and they want that guarantee. But that's just not how marketing works, and storytelling doesn't work that way. But over time, I think the benefits are like building a loyal customer.
Yeah.
Longevity is so much better than, as you mentioned about this brand, like just selling products. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, they're buying whatever, but now they're invested into the story aspect of it. Is there anything that you do to convince some of these brands? Like anything, even in the pitch deck, anything specific is that you're really trying to tell the story? Is there anything specific that you do in selling a documentary to a brand?
I think there's just like a lot of brands that need that coaching. I think the sales process is frequently kind of coaching the client through like what they need to do. And like by being in this industry for a while, like you and I have become kind of the marketing experts. Like we know what works because we're so involved in the industry. Whereas like their job is to figure out how to sell the product. And like my job is to tell them like how to connect with their audience, which will sell product, but like how to build their brand. Like we're building our own brands. And so like we've gone through the trial and error of like figuring out how that works, and I think have a lot to offer when we're kind of coaching our clients through those conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you is there any other like practical methods? Like you jump on there's the cold email. You hear back from them. Then there's maybe like jumping on a discovery call. Do you have like a generic pitch deck of how storytelling will benefit their business, or you customize something, or you just jump on a quick discovery call and talk about the benefits? Where do you go after like the cold email?
I usually like once I learn that they want to work with us and they want to create like some new video, I kind of learn what their goals are. Like, are they trying to sell product straight up? Are they trying to inform the viewers of like how the product works? Or are they trying to do like one of these like adventure documentaries where they're trying to just like build brand equity and connect with their audience? And then I have a pitch deck, not generic. Like I spend a ton of time on my pitch decks, and like every slide of the deck is like a very compelling image that fits with like the story that I want to tell.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like creative writing involved where I like explain the story that we want to tell through the film, whether it's like a 10-minute piece or like a 30-second Instagram reel.
Right.
Like I'll still build a pitch deck
Yeah.
as beautifully as I can and
Yeah.
like really try to sell them. I think that's like the biggest way to impress them especially when you're going to ask them for a lot of money at the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is like build this beautiful pitch deck that kind of shows them how you want to tell the story, what it's going to look like, what it's going to sound like. I don't really go into a whole lot of like ROI and metrics, and I haven't honestly spent a ton of time like doing the research, and like I can't guarantee that this 30-second reel that I'm going to make for you is going to get X amount of million views and make these sales. Like,
Right. Do you make it, I think the term is atomization. Have you ever heard of that? Where basically you're packaging your content with multiple deliverables from one piece of content. I'm sure there's other words to use to describe that, like cut downs and things like that. Are you packaging it in that way towards the end? You're saying like, hey, we can make this one film, but then several pieces of deliverables?
For sure. And that's what we did with Where the Wind Takes You as well. We're like, you're going to end up with a 10-ish minute documentary that's going to be a standalone documentary. You're going to put that on your website and on your YouTube channel and blast it out on Instagram. But for Instagram, you're going to need 5 or 10 like social cut downs. So we built out a package basically that has like the full film that we want to produce, and then maybe 5 vertical reels, 50 photos. And like we can take that one video and just break it down into a million assets for them to use on all their social platforms, TikTok, Instagram, whatever, YouTube, and just try to build more value by kind of increasing the deliverables instead of just, because like yeah, again,
Right.
trying to
Right.
sell one documentary
Yeah.
is gonna be a challenge.
Yeah. Where do some of these like offers land in terms of price, like in a range? Like where do they stand?
I mean, yeah, that's very brand dependent. But,
Do you feel like you give more weight because if the brand's a bigger brand, you're gonna give like more weight to the side of like if you're working with North Face, you know?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, people are always ask what my rates are for production work. Like I have my day rates and stuff.
Yeah.
But like
For
what the,
something like this, like
what they're
yeah.
asking is like, hey, how much would it cost to make a 10-minute film for us? And to be completely honest, that's very dependent on the brand. If it's this little tiny brand that has 200 followers on Instagram and they just launched their first product and nobody's ever heard about them, I'm not going to go in pitching 50 grand for a film because they're
Yeah.
not going to bite. So I'll scale it back and
Yeah.
maybe ask for 5,000.
Yeah.
But for a brand that's been doing this kind of work, pretty established, then I'm going to like build out a team, and
Right.
build out a budget that's going to get everybody paid well,
Yeah.
and produce like the highest quality
Yeah.
and highest value that we
yeah.
can.
Because you're not just charging more just because it's a bigger brand.
No.
But the stakes are higher.
Right.
People
the
need to
stakes are
understand.
higher. So
this.
I'm hiring more people.
Yeah.
We're spending way more money on
You're
post-production.
making sure you get something good.
We're
Yeah.
hiring a colorist. We're hiring somebody for like post audio mix.
Yeah.
We're building a custom score maybe.
Yeah.
So those are things that I would all try to do myself for a little brand.
Right.
But otherwise it's, yeah, I mean,
Do you ever or do you believe in like price packaging, like different price points, or you're just always typically like, here's the rate, here's the package?
yeah, that's a good point because that was something that I think worked well when we were pitching for Where the Wind Takes You. We offered kind of like a 3-tier option system.
Yeah.
Where our highest package was like, we know they're not going to bite on the biggest package, but like, here's what it would cost if you wanted to. And like, here's all the extra stuff that you get with that. I feel like normally brands will like take the middle option.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
So, and then we give them like a really cheap option that's like, yeah, I guess like this could work. We could make this work
Yeah.
if we had
Yeah.
to. And wildly enough, the brand that bought in for Where the Wind Takes You chose the highest option, which was incredible.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so we had a lot of work to do for them.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
lots of cut downs, lots of photo deliverables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about then the creative process. Like we talked a little bit about the business and pitching and things, and I think we've got that nailed down. But from your creative side of things, you made this documentary. I just was able to see the trailer. I love the sound design, the visuals. Just being in a place like that is half the effort. I feel like all the planning that goes into that. I know this personally. Like sometimes, like you spend so much time learning how to light things. Just so many film techniques, camera angles, positions, composition, all of that. And all of that just is so easy when you have a good subject or a good environment to shoot in. However, you're still primed and ready to go. You said the finished product was about 10 minutes. Tell me about, well, I'll say it more specifically. What did you learn from it? It seems that it was successful, but what's your takeaway that you're like, man, this was surprisingly challenging.
Yeah.
But I'd want to improve upon this next time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I can back it up even to just like going into projects like this, especially a lot of my work lately has been in the Arctic in like pretty gnarly environments, like tough conditions, very physical jobs. So I think it comes down to one, being very comfortable in those environments.
You got to know how to get cold then.
You got to know how to be
like,
cold. And it's like, it's not even, it's like, it's going to suck at times. And it's about like maintaining a positive attitude and like, yeah, having a good time while you're out there. That's step one, I think. And step two is like being so dialed with the camera gear and audio and lighting and stuff that's not even a thought while you're out there. Like if we're skiing a couloir with a professional athlete, I'm not thinking about my exposure or like, wait, what? Like, am I just at the right frame rate? Like, you have to be
dialed in. You got
super dialed.
Yeah, it's like a glove. You know, it just fits perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that project was interesting because it didn't really have like a designated like director or DP or like any of these like preset positions. It was like 4 guys who wanted to go to the Arctic and make a film.
Yeah.
My biggest concern was that it was going to be like the 4 of us standing shoulder to shoulder shooting the same shot.
Yeah.
So we tried to determine like, okay, my camera is going to be a cam.
Yeah.
And like, if there is a shot to shoot, pick up this camera and like, let's be strategic about like how we're doing this. So that Josiah, our poor editor, isn't coming back with like 1,000 terabytes of footage of the same shots.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a big learning curve for all of us. Was just like none of us had ever made a film together, and
was there any overlap or like any tension on set when it came to like who's directing or who's like how we're gonna get this shot, or were you able to work through that?
Not really. I think one thing that I learned from that was just kind of being patient. We had one and kind of trusting your team. There was one time where a pod of hundreds of beluga whales started swimming by our sailboat, kind of at a distance. So we needed to film it with drones. And the second a beluga was spotted, there were 2 drones in the sky. And I was like, well, I'm not going to put a third one up. Like, they're going to get the shot. Yeah. I really, really, really want to go film this.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to look over Ryan's shoulder and like watch the footage from his drone. Like I trusted them to get the shot.
Yeah.
We don't need to all be getting it.
Right. You're working together too. Yeah. So his shot is your shot essentially.
Right. Yep. We all went home with all the footage, like all the polar bear stuff. Like
that's crazy.
It was wild.
How did you shoot polar bears?
It was like this is like Svalbard is like a place people go for.
Yeah, I've seen it recently. Yeah,
polar bears.
Yeah.
You're legally not allowed to leave the city limits of their capital, Longyearbyen, without a rifle.
Wow.
Because they'll eat you.
Yeah.
And they do. Like there was a tourist a few years ago that was camping in the city and got eaten.
That's crazy.
Which is nuts.
Yeah.
We were on a sailboat, which like feels a little more comfortable, but
you saw them just trekking on an iceberg somewhere.
Yeah, but they do like swim out to the boats. Wow. At times they didn't on our trip, but they do. And like,
how close were you guys to them?
We got like 30 feet at the end.
Wow.
They went way off in the distance in the back of this fjord, and then they walked straight out to us. And they were coming this way, and we cut them off with the boat. Didn't cut them off, but like we got into position, and they just walked the coastline right past the boat. And it was a mother bear and 2 cubs, and she was just like insanely curious and like calm, and would kind of stick her nose up in the air and like smell us, but wasn't threatened by our presence at all.
Yeah.
And we got like a couple hours with her and got all of the footage, and then by the end we could just kind of set the cameras down and live in the moment and like
enjoy,
look at a mother polar bear.
That's
and
so
2
crazy, man.
Because like the first hour and a half we watched them through a camera monitor, which is takes away from the experience a little bit.
Right.
But we had so much time.
Be present in that moment. Yeah. How long did you shoot for?
Of the bears?
No, the documentary.
Yeah. We were there for 10 days. A little tiny sailboat.
Did you guys get seasick?
Close quarters, smelly guys. Butted heads a little bit with just like how tight the spaces were. And,
I bet. Yeah.
I mean,
how many people were on the boat? 5?
There's 6 participants, and then the captain and our guide. So 8 people.
Oh, wow.
Tiny little boat.
Yeah.
I'm 6'4". I was sleeping in like a little coffin of a bunk.
Yeah. Wow.
The sun never goes down in the summer there, so it's
Did you guys get motion sickness at all?
Like, no.
That's good.
I had one pretty rough day where we were just out on the open ocean for like 12 hours making a big push up the coast that I got a little nauseous, but no barfies.
Yeah. Did you guys know what the story was before you started filming?
We tried. Yeah. We had a pretty good idea. Just from Ryan's relationship with the captain. We had a bunch of like preliminary meetings where we like wrote out as best as we could like what we think the story is going to be.
Yeah.
And then after we had kind of been on the boat for probably 5 or 6 days, and like we really got to know him, and like he got to know us and was comfortable with us, we sat him down for a proper interview and probably hour and a half,
Yeah.
and got his whole background and his father's history of Arctic exploration, which is kind of what guided his
Yeah.
current path in life, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. So then, once you got the film finished, I noticed that you did a premiere for those like in the local area. Tell me about that experience. What was that like?
Yeah. This is a film that we knew we would want to like submit to a bunch of festivals, which, as you know, once you start doing the festival route, like people can't really see it until like it's done the festival tour. So everybody was asking like, hey, like, where can we watch this? Because we had not shut up about it on Instagram.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, get on with it. Like, let's see the film. And we're like, yeah, you could probably watch it on YouTube in like a year or two. So we figured like we should probably put together a local screening for all of our friends and family around here in Colorado, which is something I'd never done before.
Yeah.
So we had a good buddy at Four Noses Brewery in Denver who let us use the back of their brewery, and they set up this like huge like 50-foot inflatable screen, and
That's awesome.
had a pretty decent sound system, and yeah, we got a great crowd out there. And
Yeah. What was the response like for even your festival circuit? And then you said the brand loved it, but has there been other leads for future projects from this?
not yet, because like nobody's seen it yet.
Yeah.
Honestly, we've had the one local screening, and then it just premiered in Minnesota in Ely, where they have the Ely Film Festival. That's where the captain is from.
Okay.
And it just screened there over the weekend, and out of like I think 109 films, it just won best cinematography,
Oh, great.
which is pretty
Congrats.
exciting. Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, we knew the story wasn't mind blowing.
Yeah.
Like we made the story the best as we could with what we had.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting story, but that wasn't, I don't think, like what powers the film. Like the cinematography, however, was like something I was really proud of.
Yeah.
So that's cool to get some recognition in such a large festival. But it'll do, like, it's very early in the decision process for a lot of the film festivals this year, so we haven't really heard back from anyone else.
Yeah. But it's still cool to have something out there.
Super cool.
And something that's already won.
Yeah.
Are there other future projects on the horizon for you that you're kind of excited about?
Nothing that's like locked in.
Okay.
Lots of ideas.
Yeah. Where, like, pivoting from like an Arctic documentary, is there something that interests you or something that you'd like to, I guess, focus on? Like, you mentioned, Josiah, I think, mentioned it, like it's a perspective piece. Like it's really well shot. It's really well made.
Yep.
But yeah, the story it's good. It's decent. But do you feel like, oh man, now I really want to focus on finding like a really good story? Because then if we match if we match the cinematography in the same process, then we're golden, right?
Yeah. It was really like one of the first proper films I've ever put out, which kind of just like gave me this like thirst for more.
Yeah.
And right after that one, Josiah and I did Ephemeral, an ice climbing documentary we filmed in Iceland. And
what was your position on that?
So I was basically a cam op for that. Josiah filmed part of it in Chamonix, and then the two of us went to Iceland, and we both kind of documented this professional ice climber doing some absolutely crazy routes in Iceland.
Yeah.
But now that those are both doing the festival tour this year, I'm like, yeah, this is what I need to be doing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
To find that like voice, to have a couple projects under your belt with that like finish wrapped up.
Yep.
And a couple people paid for them, you know, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Like let's jump over to something to kind of wrap this up, like more general, but with storytelling. What do you feel like people get wrong when it comes to crafting their documentary, crafting their film or storytelling? Maybe like a trend that is obnoxious to you, something that you just don't like very well.
Well, I am not in a position to critique other people's storytelling.
That's good. That's very humble of you to say that. No.
But yeah, I think like especially with those last two films, Sure, both of them touched on, they were both in very fragile environments in the Arctic, which like everybody knows glaciers are melting. And yeah, like we just, the thing that we didn't want to do with both of those was just like shove conservation
Mm.
down people's throats. Cause I think that is a matter that's like I'm super passionate about,
Yeah.
but it's something that's been very overdone.
So you didn't want to be too preachy.
We didn't want
with
to be
it.
too preachy because that's not what
Yeah.
it was about. And I think honestly, people get it for the most part. Like we're not. I don't think there's a lot of education that we could do
Yeah.
without like hiring the right people. Like I don't know how fast the glaciers are melting and like what
Yeah, like
the
the
direct
research,
solution
yeah.
is. Like
Yeah.
we can all do our part, but again, that's like that
Yeah.
wasn't the point of the film.
But just getting, like Josiah said, just getting that perspective helps people improve on their knowledge
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
you know, the climate and what's going on in the world.
But I also think like people haven't really seen these places a lot, and
Yeah.
the politicians who are making the decisions on these parts of the world have definitely never been there. So if we can put a piece out that wins best cinematography of a part of the
Yeah.
Arctic that's super fragile, like, and just get more eyes on those locations and people realize like what a fragile ecosystem it is, the wildlife that lives there, the native people that depend on it. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's all that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
for me, it's more about like just sharing those stories and those
Right.
places with
Yeah.
with the masses. Like, not everybody's going to have the opportunity to go to Svalbard.
Yeah.
So if we can bring a piece of that home through a film,
Yeah.
or even just photography, like
Right.
that's a win.
So your takeaway is like not being so direct on the nose with every piece that you're making, and then thinking just of the long term,
Yeah.
even the arc of how your career of telling stories
Mm-hmm.
is like, it's not a make or break it with every film that you're making,
Yeah.
even though it is to the degree of like making it look good and feel good and sound good and carry a message. But it's not like you have to, you know, this is your last dying wish message and story. And because people are, even though most like we don't always seem like the smartest beings, we're pretty intelligently perceptive beings.
Yeah.
So we can like sense when things are getting preached to us and we sort of like turn off, or we know when there's like a overt agenda. But if you're like leading with a human connection or a human experience, or I just want to share this with you, that's very emotional and it doesn't feel like it's you know, really agenda pushing.
Yeah.
Then
And there's nothing wrong
you're gonna
with
listen
that.
to it.
Like, there's nothing wrong with the films that are pushing those agendas. Some of my favorite conservation films ever are about those topics, but they worked with researchers who have been spending their entire careers like studying these topics and like are providing you with like facts.
They're giving
and, like,
more substance to it. Yeah.
so much more substance in a very interesting way. And like, that's maybe not our specialty. Like, we come from a background of like outdoor adventure and mountaineering, and like, you know, we have those skills to go to those places with a camera
Yeah.
that maybe some people don't. Like, I think that's a
Yeah.
really small niche of people that can like exist in
Go there and tell
in
the
like
story,
these
yeah.
seriously challenging, cold, high places and tell a story with a camera.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Nate, man, I really enjoyed the conversation. Just from the business aspect of things, I think just, you know, sitting down for the first time with you, just learning so much about your background in networking, getting those connections, sending out those emails, you know, getting connected with people, taking time to make great pitch decks, as well as the risk and adventure spirit to get out there in the Arctic Circle and shoot some incredible stories, and beyond, you know, with all the stories that are upcoming for you. I think it's awesome. So thanks for joining the podcast, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was good to get to know you.